All right, guys. Motor's sitting in the truck. Finally. Not taking up space in the garage. So I left off the last video with the firewall repair. So both sides of that, the firewall and down inside the cowl, and then the entire front frame section here, the front diff, inside the frame rails in there, all the way to the back of the cab, and then the tunnel all the way to the back of the cab is all painted. A lot of guys use POR 15. I've been using this product for 15 years. I worked at a industrial paint company, and this was the surface tolerant epoxy that we always used, and this stuff it's awesome. It's really good. It's kind of the same as POR, same concept. It's like I said, surface tolerant. It bonds really well to surface rust, and almost bonds better to surface rust than bare clean steel. It's just an epoxy primer. You have to top coat it. I wasn't super concerned about the top coat. The stuff that you can see, like the outside of the frame and the front diff and everything, I'm just gonna spray a whatever, Rust-Oleum or something for a top coat just to keep it from fading, because this stuff will fade and it'll chalk over with time. Being it's only a primer, it doesn't have any UV resistance. But I mean, most of the stuff, obviously, like firewall and all that, you don't got to worry about it. Like it'll be fine without a top coat. So it's really good stuff. Look it up, and I believe you can still get it for quite a bit cheaper than POR 15. That stuff is kind of really exorbitantly priced. So, highly recommend. Like I said, I've been using it for a really long time. Like I said, the firewall got painted inside and out. And the seams that I've hit so far, I've been using 3M 5200. It's a marine adhesive sealant. It's actually really as much a glue as it is a seam sealer. It's like it's really expensive, but it's amazing. I've seen it used to hold transducers on the back of fiberglass boats. You can literally glue a transducer on with this stuff, and it'll stick, but it stays flexible. Stuff takes a long time to kick over. I mean, a few days to really kick over, and then it still stays kind of flexible. So I don't know. I've had really good luck with it, with using it in boats. So I figured, might as well use it here too. And I haven't sound deadened the inside of the firewall yet, but the entire thing is gonna get done with that same stuff you see out there, all the way to the windshield seam, and I might even do the back of the dash. So I want this thing extremely quiet. So yeah, and about the this deadener being used in the engine compartment. So in the vast majority of cases, like, you don't do this. This is not recommended. This stuff doesn't it doesn't withstand all that much temperature. Certainly not exhaust heat. But so I can talk about that more when I get over there. But the way it is right now, this stuff is not going to stay on the firewall. This stuff would fall off, especially over there. It certainly would not stay adhered for very long at all. this is just me, I guess maybe experimenting and really trying to get carried away with keeping the sound out of the cab. So it's going to be on the highway for hours and hours at a time. So, but yeah, like I said, I'll show you my idea I got. Well, I guess several ideas I got over there to get this stuff to really stick and stay. So the engine, there's no tranny or transfer case yet. I still got to get a torque converter. So, but you can see down here so there's the offset of the engine. I mean, that's the center of the truck there. So that was entirely pretty much to give me my clearance for my AC compressor over here. Like I mentioned in the previous videos, a lot of guys cut this frame rail all up over here in order to fit this, trying to keep the engine in the middle of the truck. I didn't see any reason why you couldn't offset it. It's also going to give you more room with, so it's kind of not ideal with this truck in this engine. You're fishing a 4-inch exhaust pipe on the same side as the transfer case drop. So you gotta finagle a 4-inch pipe past the 205 transfer case and the front driveline and everything. So the exhaust kit I got is for a first-gen Dodge. A lot of guys use them and they say they fit really well. So, but I figured again with the offset, it is only going to give you more real estate down there, working with the exhaust and the front driveline. So, but you can see how far this mount kind of stands off of the frame versus this one. Is a lot closer to the frame. So this is a second generation Dodge starter. The first generation, the motor sits a lot more vertical and there's a lot more clearance, but still with the offset, like it kind of just clears enough with that second gen starter. The power steering pump gets sort of kind of close to this frame rail, but it's not terrible either. So kind of the tightest spot back here you can see is just kind of above that water sender hole on the back of the head there, and it's probably, I don't know, 1/2 inch or so of clearance. And that gave me and this is a first gen Dodge radiator just kind of sitting in here for mock-up. I'm probably not going to use this radiator, but you can see the clutch fan clearance. There's a lot of guys that don't have clutch fan clearance for whatever reason. The motor is not mounted further back enough to be able to get one in there. This was a requirement for me. I was not running electric fans on a tow rig, so I was really glad that this cleared. I was kind of sweating whether that was going to work or not. So the first generation engines, the fan hub that the clutch threads onto there is closer to the engine than any of the other Cummins engines, the ones used in trucks. So that worked, to my benefit too. So but the first gen Dodge radiator, I don't know if you can tell, but it's not very big. This truck had a 6.2 diesel. It had been converted to gas, big block, but the 6.2 diesel radiator was still in here. It was the biggest radiator you could get in these trucks, and you can see here's the normal radiator mounting location. Like, so even the normal radiator, the sizes, there's a few different sizes that fit into these two mounts, but even that radiator is bigger than this first gen Dodge Cummins radiator. So the 6.2 diesel one comes all the way out here. So I'm probably just going to use that. I was going to try to make the Dodge radiator work because I wanted to also use the Dodge first gen intercooler, which, as you can see, also is not huge by any means. It's really small. So I hung that intercooler up in here, and in the place it would have to sit, and these are the holes for the inlet and outlet, you know, right here and right here, like right into the supports of the core support. Like, you would have to absolutely butcher this core support all up in order to use that intercooler. So I kind of changed my mind on once I seen that. I found an aftermarket intercooler that was actually recommended for these body style trucks. It's not as wide as that one, but that one's only like 1.25 1.5 inch core deep. The core is 1.5 inch deep, I should say. This aftermarket one is a 3-inch core, so it's a little narrower. It's around the same height, and it's double the thickness, the core. So I don't think it'd be sacrificing any efficiency going to this aftermarket, you know, intercooler. If anything, it's going to work even better. But the nice thing about it is the inlet and outlet come straight out the side of it, and it's also offset up, you know, either towards the bottom or the top of the intercooler, not in the center like these are, you know. So you could position it in here, and the inlet and outlet are literally going to be right up here facing outward. Super easy to go right straight out the holes that are already in the core support. So I can see why they say it works well, you know, versus that stupid thing. What a lot of people use is a second gen Dodge intercooler, and it's a lot bigger and it's a lot wider. The inlet and outlet still go, you know, front to back, but it's way bigger, way wider. If anything, they probably go right out those holes too, or it's close, but definitely outside of these supports, you know, so you don't have to just butcher the core support. So I should have that before the next video. So what else here? Okay, so the factory AC housing is super close to the downpipe and the turbine housing on the turbo. Like, none of this is going to work well, and like I said, the stuff ain't going to stay on the firewall either. So initially, before I even put this on here, the plan was, first off, they have this stuff called tunnel shield. It's like fiberglass woven mat that has an adhesive back that a lot of people line their transmission tunnels with, because it withstands 2,000 degrees of radiant heat. It's really good stuff. So there was going to be I was going to do a second layer, at least in this whole center section, anywhere near this exhaust, of that tunnel shield stuff over the kill mat here. And then they make, obviously, you guys have seen turbo blankets. So this is just a T3 flange turbo. A blanket for one is cheap. They're like $37 or something to completely encapsulate the turbine housing. And then they also make, for like $150, a manifold blanket that completely covers the manifold and then wires in between the ports to hold it in place. And then wrap the downpipe and exhaust wrap, you know, down there quite a ways. And then I still don't think that's enough to keep the heat off of this AC housing. I don't want any heat going into this AC housing at all. And we got, you know, 800-degree exhaust amps right next to it. So I was going to stand off of this housing and then even go all the way in back in behind this thing, and then over top of it all the way back out to here, a big aluminum heat shield. Heat shield this entire thing, you know, bring this panel all the way down to the frame. Just put a huge heat shield in here to keep the heat away from the firewall and off of the AC duct here. So that's my plan. And it also would give you, you know, if you have a piece of aluminum here going all the way, you know, back to here, you got a nice little spot to loom your heater hoses too, right over top of it and over to here. It's kind of not really ideal. A lot of guys actually come down here and then they build their own run of hose or whatever off of that one, and they bring the heater hoses out here and then over around, kind of like GM did, and it does look cleaner. But I don't know, I'm just gonna keep these ones for now. You know, I guess if it looks terrible, then I'll go from there. We can always change it later. Yeah, what else? It's moving the engine over that way. One of the bell housing bolts is super close to the tunnel over there. I mean, I moved it as far as I could. So it may need to. I may need to. I don't know. It's hard to. Yeah, you can't really see, but it's this top side bell housing bolt in there is real close. I may have to actually cut just a little square kind of out of the floor in the cab there and just alleviate that clearance problem. You know, it's more than worth the hassle, you know, moving it over this way. So, I mean, the wiring is like nothing. Like, this is the engine harness. Like, these two are just battery power. They power the cab, you know, and then you got a starter solenoid and keyed hot. Like, there's really not a whole lot else to it. Oil sender and water sender, and it's cool because it's all on this side of the engine. Everything is. Your key on and off solenoid is right in here. The oil sender is going to be right down there. The water sender, you seen, is going to be back there. You know, and then the starter's over here. Really, the only wires that are going to carry over there are going to be the wires to power the alternator. And then I'm going to add a wire to that. You can take the rear cover off of those actually, and you can add a wire right to one of the stator terminals to run an aftermarket tachometer. So, because I'm probably, like I said, just going to run a standard square body gauge cluster for now. I'm going to see if I can find a diesel one, you know, just so it says diesel fuel only on the, you know, it looks correct. And then I just got to add 3 gauges, Trans-Temp, Boost, and EGT. And they actually make those factory match to these square body clusters. Autometer does. They're super cool. So wait till you guys see those. I'm super excited about those actually, because they literally look like the factory gauges, like to a T. It's pretty cool. This thing comes like that. It's not really ideal here with the master cylinder. I popped it off and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna do this with it. Well, it's not square, so I might be able to get away with doing that, but I'm gonna have to go in and waller these holes out and then use like socket cap bolts and not the hex flange bolts that it came with in order to do that. So I don't know, I haven't quite figured that out, how I want to do that yet, but And then underneath that, you know, this is the grid heater. They call it the intake air heater. This is what a Cummins has instead of glow plugs. So a lot of guys in cold climates don't even run a grid heater either, and these things usually still start up really well. But what else? The brake booster is junk. It's leaking oil for a long time. It was piled up slop and sludge on this, in the inside of this frame rail down there, kind of past the shackle there. It was an absolute disaster. I was down there scraping and scrubbing, and I had power washed I don't know how many times, degreased and power washed to get especially this front diff cleaned up. And it was really bad. You know, you get where people have been greasing, and then they leave the excess grease, and then the grease just kind of clumps and cakes and just kind of sits. Yeah, it was. I was in here chiseling with screwdrivers, and it sucked, but it had to get painted before the engine, you know, went in. Clearly, same as the inside of the frame and the tunnel. You know, I figured you get the tranny and exhaust and everything in there, you're not going to be able to access that. So basically, with that being painted, the outside of the frame under the cab and the outside of the outside of the frame under the cab and the outside of the cab here from the frame out need to be done, and the rockers and cab corners need to be done. So I figured, in order to do the rockers and cab corners really correctly, you're gonna need to drop the tanks. So do one at a time. Drop this tank out, fix these rockers and cab corners, paint the outside of the frame and then the cab all the way down to the, you know, and then put the tank back in, and same thing, do the same thing on the other side. And then the only thing that'll be left, the entire underside of the truck and the frame will be essentially like from these leaf perches back here, which this is all easy back here, man. Just like come back here with the needle scaler and clean this up a little bit, remove some some exhaust hangers that I'm not going to use, and this could all be sprayed back here with that same 235. So, and that'll be it. Like the whole chassis will be done. You just kind of compartmentalize it, you know, until the whole thing looks like it's been, you know, cab off restored when it hasn't been, and I just kind of cheated. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll keep you in the loop here. Hopefully we can get a torque converter here soon so I can get the drivetrain up underneath this thing and start hooking all that stuff up. So, yep. What do you think, Dot? Huh? Should we get back to work? Thanks, guys.